Julian Kim and Peter S. Lee are a filmmaking duo from Flushing, Queens, New York. They've been friends since high school, bonding over a love of StarCraft, Lincoln Park, spicy deli beef patties, and iced coffees even during frigid New York winters. But it was their passion for filmmaking and a shared mission to tell relatable stories that blossomed into a working partnership. Their collaborative filmmaking approach in narrative short films, documentaries, and other video projects eventually allowed them to create Happy Cleaners, their debut narrative feature-length film about the Korean-American immigrant experience. Embraced by audiences for its authentic storytelling, the film garnered numerous honors at various film festivals, including an Emerging Filmmaker Award and an Audience Choice Award. The film's reception further fueled the duo's ambition to depict meaningful stories that are for all audiences. Please join me in welcoming Julian Kim and Peter S. Lee. I will be walking around to field any questions and such with a microphone and such, so feel free to give a moment and I'll head over to you. Just to kick things off and get started, and welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. There was some discussion out in the lobby, and it was a scene that really struck me, and that is the scene between Hyunhee and Kevin, where she talks about being the bridge, the hyphen between Korean and American, and I'm very curious to know how much of that in your writing really came from the two of you, from both of you, in your personal experience, and what your thoughts are on that, because it was a beautiful scene.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, thank you, Professor, for having us, and thank you, Mercy College. It's excited to be here. It's been a while to walk around campus again. Feel youthful again. Yeah, so during my college years, I think I talked with Peter a lot about the identity of the Korean-American identity. You know, like, what are we? Like, are we Korean? Are we American? What does it mean to be American? And kind of that experience of, like, defining who we are. So the film, actually, we talked about, you know, working on this for a long time, and throughout like our years of commuting and like chatting and trying to think of stories, like this has been a pivotal moment of trying to answer the question of what it means to be a Korean American. And I think we realize it's not so black and white when it comes down to our identity. And if we are a gray color, maybe we should just embrace that color. Maybe we are that kind of, you know, morphed hyphen, quote unquote, generation where we are kind of the bridge between eventually losing that kind of Korean identity but becoming fully American. So yeah, I think, you know, that was part of our journey as we worked on the film, and the kind of pivotal concept, I guess, of inspired to write the movie. Yeah.
Yes, I'll have.
Yes, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was an exceptionally effective and powerful portrayal of the Korean American community. I'm wondering what has been the reaction in the Korean American community to the film?
Well, thank you very much for those generous words. I think that it's kind of twofold. First reaction is there's the awe of like kind of being seen, where it's like, wow, our everyday lived experience is told in this, we're seen and shared in this manner. And then it's kind of like, oh, our dirty laundry is being aired in public. Oh my goodness. and then, so it's kind of like after that, everybody just needs to take a moment, and you kind of talk about like, well, we should talk about it all, the sort of why are so many of us feeling a certain way, or really why are so many of us wired a certain way. And I think that just too often we're too busy and we don't pause to think about like, well, what does family life, how you grew up, how does that really impact you? And so generally positive, but sometimes we've gotten, you know, some conversations about like it was just kind of like too close to home, and it made folks uncomfortable. But I think our perspective is, well, like that's when healing can occur if you're able to have a conversation. So we're hoping to encourage more of those.
First, I love the movie. Congratulations, it was really great. I also really love the food imagery in the movie, and I was wondering if you made a conscious decision to choose certain dishes or choose certain times to include the food, or is it just such a natural part of the family experience that you didn't really have to think about it too much?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We wanted the food to be a pivotal character in the movie, and we intentionally chose, dishes that are not commonly known to, a lot of people. Like when you think of Korean food, you think of like Korean barbecue, kimchi, and like all that good stuff. But we chose kind of like homemade dishes, like the acorn jelly, like the chicken casserole, and yeah, like those kind of stuff that we would normally typically eat at a Korean home. And food was so important within the movie just because that was kind of like the place where a lot of unsaid things were told and said in the movie. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we are representing what a true Korean immigrant household might eat, and yeah, what kind of function food has within the immigrant family.
I'd just like to add that, I mean, food is the vessel or vehicle to say I love you in the family. Those words are never uttered, but it's been said many times. And that's why it's an important character in the film.
I really enjoyed this film and it was very heartfelt. My question is about the process of creating this story. As co-writer and director, what was the process of working with each other to create this?
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy for us for this particular film just because it was a shared experience. Like, we grew up together, we know what we're talking about. I think in the beginning, it was a bigger story. Like, we had a bigger family, and we had to make a lot of compromises to kind of tell what we wanted to tell within like an hour and a half time frame. So it was natural, I think, to be honest. Like, a lot of people say like, oh, how do you two work together? Like, how do you share titles? But I think, and even with our crew, they were like, who do we follow? But I think at the end of the shoot, like everyone kind of agreed, like yeah, like there was some kind of understanding, and I think we were able to kind of coordinate that well on set. But I think ultimately why that was possible was because we both agreed and had a shared vision when we were writing the script. Because we both had a mission that we want to tell an authentic Korean American story that is true from our experiences, and make sure that people kind of take away from that experience. I mean, it's been a while like since we made this movie. I think we started writing in 2016, went to film in 2017, and released it in 2019. And it's been a very long process, and I'm very grateful that we have a lot of good API content out now that we could kind of compare to. But at the time, I think like we were just hungry for this kind of content. So we were very missional when we approached the film. Like we were not trying to be like put our ego first, or like let's say like make our names known in any way. Like we wanted to make sure that the film is serving the community, representing the Korean American community. And I think that's what made it possible for us to work together. Yeah.
Hi, yes, it was great. I've spent a lot of time in Flushing, so it was really nice to see it again. It's been a while. What made you choose the dynamic of having everybody in the family be financially struggling rather than the dichotomy of Korean immigrants who have done very, very well?
So I think for us, well, we don't come from wealthy families, but I think we actually want to really challenge this idea of model minority myth that's really prevalent. Yes, there are folks who've done exceptionally well, and that's true, but I think the vast majority of the folks probably are living more, closer to just working class, struggling families, and that's sort of the realities that we know. And I think this isn't the representation, it's just all representation. And so for us to write something very authentic, we're writing about what we know in our community of Flushing. It's not, wealthy by any means, just working class families, so that's what we wanted to capture. That was the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think even when we watch it, like this is a fairy tale. Like the way that our mom and dad and the family, at the end of the day, they apologize, they come together. But personally, like that wasn't the kind of family we grew up in. We had a very broken family. Like there was abuse, there was a lot of separation with our parents, a lot of argument, and I just watching it now, I realize there's a lot of yelling in the family, but that's kind of like how we grew up. And going back to what the Korean American community response was, surprisingly, like when we showed it in Flushing, some of our friends who have similar experiences are like, yeah, I don't know, I need time to process because it's bringing back all the scars and pain of living in like such a situation like this. So yeah, I think we wanted to tell that, and I think some people were kind of surprised that Korean American families have this kind of experience. But yeah, ultimately, I think that this is what is authentic to us in our experience.
Over here. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Your film was excellent. And what was interesting, I was talking to my friend here, is that the glue of the family were mainly the female, okay? The mother, the daughter, and even the grandma. They were the ones that kind of put everything in perspective and focus. And this film, what I liked about it was that anybody who has had who have been immigrants, they could find themselves there, a piece of their history there, of their stories. So it was very, very well done, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just speaking to you mentioned forgiveness, and as we get further on into the film, each pair of characters has a scene where there's a reconciliation, and it's just from father to son, from mother to daughter, from mother to son, and even the grandmother bearing a bit of responsibility that she feels, because she could have done better to pass along, maybe some, more of the American dream, although I'm not sure it was that the parents are the ones who emigrated, and then, but there's a sense from generation to generation of kind of feeling a responsibility. I don't know if you want to talk about that and the whole forgiveness idea.
Yeah, so this is kind of the part where Julian mentioned a little bit of it as a fairy tale. So some of the elements is aspirational because so many folks that from the community who've seen the film, I mean, it's not like they've had these kind of conversations with their own parents, or they as parents have necessarily apologized to their child. But it definitely did stir a conversation, and that's what we're kind of hoping it would. One example is one of the Flushing Town Hall screening. The father and daughter came to the screening, and they were just kind of able to actually reconcile because they were forced to talk about it. The daughter was thinking, "Oh my God, Dad, I didn't know this is your reality. There's a side that I don't get to see you." And then the father also the same thing. I didn't realize this is the kind of impact we're having on you. And so apparently they talked it out, and there was some healing. So we're hoping more families are able to have that kind of conversation, and if you're one of those lucky ones where this is already happening in your real life, then that's awesome.
Well, seeing things from different perspectives. I began the evening and I mentioned something about flavors, and I think it's hidden, so I'm wondering if there was a deliberate subtext in your scenes where Hyani, when she makes the dish, it's too salty. And when the mother makes it, it's too bland for Kevin. And so each one has their own taste, so it's on their own perspective. Is that, am I reading into it, or is that?
You got it.
I think she had a question.
Yes.
I love the movie.
Thank
It
you.
was very heartfelt. What I was interested that I noticed is that many times the kids will speak English and they will understand, which is part of being a foreigner. Eventually you learn, but they never responded in English, or very little, probably. But it was mostly the culture we kept with the language, which was fantastic. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. We made a very conscious choice to try to sort of mix in Konglish, which is Korean English kind of broken in together, where you speak, some English but mix in some Korean words. And I think that's just what how we grew up, and we have very broken Korean. It's not perfect, but and a lot of misinformation could happen, miscommunication can happen speaking that way, and there's misunderstandings with our parents and even our older generations because of language and the language barriers. But I think we were very conscious of trying to include that in the film, even though it was subtitled Nightmare. Yeah.
I thought there was great honesty in the portrayal of this really struggling family, because I think if you look at the reality of the American dream, the nation of immigrants, the vast majority of people had to go through real struggles, and the success stories naturally are the ones that we talk about. But I thought there was great honesty there. What can you tell us about the cast?
Oh, yeah. So it was hard to cast, especially looking for our dad and our mom, just because there weren't many pool of actors that we could look into. So that was a big struggle. When we wrote, even when we were writing the script, we're like, who are we gonna cast? How are we gonna find someone local in New York and who's available? So we thought, should I ask my mom? Should I ask my dad? And then they were like, no, I have to go to the store. I can't participate in your movie for 21 days. But luckily, the father figure, Charles, who plays the father, he took some acting classes because when he first immigrated to America, his father told him that if you want to be a pastor, which he is, then you have to take some acting classes. So he did, just so that he could fix his dialect and be fluent in English. And that's why he took acting classes, so he could be a better pastor and preacher. And then when we told him about the movie, he was like, oh, I took acting classes for one summer, but sure, I'm free. But he took it on as this is part of my, ministry, right? Ministry. So he did it, and he was willing to adjust his schedule, took time off, and work and participate in the movie. So he became my second father throughout the whole process. He really guided me and shared his immigrant experience and all that. Mrs. Lim, who plays the mom, was an actor in Korea, but she had to give that dream up when she got married and immigrated here. So there was
And an award winner as well.
Right. Yes. She was a award winner in Korea early on, in her early 20s and 30s. So she had an itch for acting. So once we proposed this, was you interested? She was like, yes. And so now that she's available and now she's retired, she was willing to come on board. And we found her through KoreanAmericanStory.org, the organization that helped us kind of kickstart the project. They're a huge resource in terms of financials, support, but also just kind of that kind of casting resources, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Do we see Charles's church in the film?
No.
That isn't his.
That's actually the church we grew up in.
Yeah. That's our home church, yeah.
Yes.
I enjoyed the movie very much. I can relate to it a little bit because I'm considered like the first generation that my parents immigrated, so
Yeah.
I felt like watching the movie kind of like touched me a little bit. And the fact that I married a person from my country and I'm a little American, raising our kids is very difficult. The yelling, the screaming, of course in our country we're not allowed to talk back to our parents. I very enjoyed it, and I realized that when the parents were doing dry cleaning, it's like they don't have the experience. They stay in their comfort zone. People don't realize that it's very hard for a person knowing one business to go try something else. On the opposite side, us Americans, we're willing to try something new. We speak the language because of the language barrier. I feel like that we forget. They stick to what they know, and then they keep on going until, and they struggle so much. So I kind of touched me a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, it's been quite a time since we worked on this movie, and then watching it now, like I'm in a different place in life. Like when I was telling Professor DeRosa about this, but then when we worked on the movie, I was a newlywed. I just got married, and I was relating so much to the kids and Danny especially because that was me. I yelled at my fiance and be like, I can't afford a wedding ring, like that kind of stuff. But then now, actually being a dad and having a child, like I could connect more with the mom and dad character. And yeah, I definitely think that this has been a very interesting kind of time journey to see overall. But at the same time, I also know that it's hard to venture out into different fields. Personally, like for me, if I was to lose my job, I don't know what else I would do. Like I don't know if I could work into some kind of trade or start a business somewhere, and I'm very limited. I'm sure, like for our parents, when that kind of situation hits, like they don't know anything else because they've been only doing cleaners for 30 years, and what else can they do? And it's part of it was, for us when we were writing the story, like the parents were giving up their ego and they were giving up what they've known. It's now their second time doing that. I mean, they already gave it up the first time coming to America, but now they're doing it again. But for what and for whom? And I think that was something that we wanted to share, that ultimately our parents that's all they know, right? All they know is just sacrificial love, and that's how they communicate love to us. So yeah.
And I think the children struggle as well.
Excuse me?
The children struggle as well. So the parents, the immigrants to the United States, and then the kids, they're trying to find. I see my son, he's trying to find his identity.
Right.
What am I? Am I American or am I Middle
Yes.
Eastern? So I'm like struggling with him right now, trying to tell him, yes, you're in America, but your DNA tells who you are, and it's like a struggle kind. And I think that it's very difficult to raise children, trying to give them their values and your culture, and then living in the United States. I find it very hard for children to adapt and to be proud of their backgrounds and their ethnicity. So I'm struggling through that.
Yeah, and me too. Like I don't.
That's why I have no more kids. I'm like, I'm done.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out like how do I teach my kid, to be, who he is. Like he's gonna come to me and be like, Dad, like when you think of American, when you think of like initially, the first person who comes to mind, like who is it, right? And ideally, like for me, it would be a vast majority of colorful people, and that's the goal, and that's my dream. And when I'm hoping that when I ask my son that, like he would be able to answer that confidently. But to be honest, for me, when I first think of the word American, I don't see myself. And I think that's why I think we are that kind of bridge generation to eventually dismantle that, right? And to share that, for the next generation on, the definition of what it means to be American could be more solidified and to be more beautiful and diverse. Yeah.
I know there's a lot of students here who are in the media studies program, so I'm curious maybe if you want to talk about the journey of after you wrote your script and getting it to financed and produced, and even you said you first were finished and released in 2019, but now the film has had a life going on into 2020 with the pandemic and such. So maybe with the I think the financial struggles was the film given like a new life because all of a sudden there was an impact on small businesses in a big way, and we could kind of see that in this.
Well, so yeah, as far as timing goes, I mean, the pandemic definitely kind of ruined the flow, because we just completely were not able to do like the second half of the film festival life cycle. But folks got creative. We had virtual screenings, and which to some extent we're able to reach a broader audience because now when you have like a Zoom Q&A, you got people tuning in from like all over the country. So that was kind of cool. So you take your wins where you can. But as far as like just sort of the process goes, I think the writing, just writing what you know that you're most confident, like that's sort of the starting point, and really just if you feel like somebody else can tell this story, then maybe let them do it. But if only you're the person that can really tell this story, then that's it, and that's what you start with. And then every sort of step is like, an uphill battle where now you wrote the script and nobody tells you this, that so much of filmmaking is, you're an entrepreneur. You gotta find your own. You're really running a startup. But your idea is a film. And you're selling this vision, and you gotta get people excited. Hopefully, generate some funds to help you make the movie. And then after you make the movie, then it's like this whole other, you gotta market it and all that. So, we always joke like this is our like film grad school experience and you can make a million different shorts, but I think it's one of those things where just gotta take the leap and try to make a longer film because just that experience is the greatest lesson you can ever learn for yourself. So just gotta do it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of media students, studies students here could relate to it, but when you watch your own film, you're gonna only thing to think about all the negatives, right? Like, oh man, I wish like we did this, we fixed this, and like even watching this one now, like only thing I could think about was all the compromises we had to make for the film. Like there's so many scenes we had to cut, and the first thing that I thought of was like that damn minivan. Like that minivan, we bought that minivan for $1,000 from some guy. We had to get it like licensed and registered and drive it around, but we had to like keep the steering wheel like this because it was crooked.
It was not road safe.
Yeah, it was not road safe. And the door was actually broken, like it was a hazard. It was really bad, but then we did it for the sake of the film, and then we got rid of it. We paid money to get rid of it, like at the end of the film. So it's all. I could go on about all the crazy production nightmares, and I'm sure students here would relate to it. But have hope. Like it's gonna be great. But understand that you're never gonna be fully satisfied. And if you do, it's okay. Just keep making, keep writing, and on to the next one. Yeah.
Well, what is the next one?
We're still working on it. we need money. That's the thing. It was this. So this film, we were lucky enough to have an organization to help really crowdfund and get the community to kind of finance the film.
That's those 500 names we saw at the end.
Yes. Yeah. So we had two basic community pitches. First was a gala event where we had people funding for the production, and then we did a Kickstarter campaign where a lot of people chipped in to help post-production. So, but you can only ask people, like your community, so many times, right? So we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll, try again and see what we could do. And I think that's what Peter was mentioning before with the pandemic, because we thought, like after that in the festival, normally, like it would kind of help us get into a flow and get into financing and hopefully meet somebody and get into the next project, but that just kind of was hard to, So now we're just trying to overcome this and work on what's next and hopefully find an investor and make another movie.
but the wonderful thing is, as you said, like, now you went beyond making shorts to, now you have a calling card.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have something, we have done this, so your credibility goes up
Oh, yeah,
enormously because you made you successfully completed a feature film that's very good, really good. It's enjoyable, it's getting response, it's getting the accolades, and, you know, so that, you know, boosts your
Absolutely,
credibility, so
yeah.
kudos.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely thankful for that, yeah.
Yes?
So I want to say I really did enjoy the film. There's a lot of stuff in there that resonated with me, especially being like a first generation Guatemalan American. There's two things I kind of want to say. I think you guys like really captured, I guess, like the sibling dynamic really well. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of times, like, the older sibling tends to be more understanding with the parents and always trying to be helpful towards them. And while the younger sibling does try to be as helpful as they can, they always have that need that they want to do what they want to do. And they try to be a bit more like, I guess, like rebellious in a way. But I really love that. And I just want to know, is there a specific reason as to why you chose like the parents to work in like the dry cleaning business instead of like doing something else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a cleaner's kid. That was my parents. My parents had cleaners ever since I was a baby. I remember, you know, crawling under those racks, and those jokes about ice cream trucks and library. It's real. Like, that was me. I did put paper towel under my armpits during the hot days. It's not pretty. It's gross inside being cleaners. But I think in New York, at least, like, that's the kind of go-to place for a lot of Korean Americans to start their business. It's either cleaners, delis, or nail salons. And I think that's because, you know, when someone starts a business, like, and more immigrants come, it's easy to kind of pass on and teach. And, you know, to start a cleaner business was relatively accessible for the Korean American community. So, yeah, you'll see a lot of Korean Americans when we were growing up back in like the 90s and 2000s, running and operating dry cleaning businesses. So, and I think that was our motif. But again, we don't think that this is a representation of all Korean Americans. It's just one part of it that we are familiar with and we want to show.
And your question also asked about the sibling authenticity in the relationship there. There's a third writer on the
Kat,
script.
right, Kat. Mm-hmm.
Is Kat a sibling?
Yes, she has a brother, and I have a sister.
Oh, they're not related.
Oh, no, she's not. Yeah, she's not my sister. Yeah. But yes, we all. I mean, he's the only child, but.
Any other questions? The music. Actually, there's you had two songs that are original to the movie. You know, "Live Your Life" and "Word to the Hyphen." Mention anything about?
Well, yeah. So those are two artists that we know. The person who wrote the opening track. I mean, they're both Flushing, or they grew up in Flushing, so that's trying to get the local artists to, you know, collaboration going on. But the end track, we had a rough cut, and we just sent it to the artist, and like, can you write something for us? And we got something in like 2 hours. Like just because his parents also ran a drag cleaners in, I think, Atlanta or something, or was it Georgia? I forget. So some other part of the country, but just, it was like, this is my life. Like, I'm Kevin, is basically what he said. And he, you know, wrote something beautiful, and we were just kind of like, wow. That's our ending song.
No, I think it's almost like he took the scene between Yanni and Kevin and the hyphen and ran with it. I would not have guessed it was 2 hours, but that's amazing.
Right.
So what
Yeah. I think we emailed him like, hey, we wanna, you know, working on a movie about this, and would you write a song in the concept of a hyphen? And then he wrote it as like, yo, that's me. Here's a track. And I think all of us, like, the moment we heard it, we had this kind of sting and like this emotional impact, like, because it was so good. I mean, yeah, please take a listen. Like, it's It's really good, and I really like my favorite artist, Year of the Ox. When we first reached out to them, like they were like kind of like a high status for me, because they were like, oh, how can we approach them? They're like kind of semi-celebrities, but they were like kind enough to say yes. So, yeah.
You don't know if you don't ask.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Filmmaking 102, I guess.
excellent. Well, give a round of applause to Peter and Julian. It's absolutely wonderful.